Nigeria's electricity value chain, which includes generation, transmission and distribution, has faced many difficulties for over 62 years. The situation is made worse by a protracted multi-decade crisis in Nigeria's power sector. The Electric Power Sector Reform Act of 2005 marked the beginning of efforts to address the long-standing problems in the power sector, and on November 1, 2013, the privatization process got underway. Now, Nigeria's population of over 200 million people continues to grapple with a meager 4,387.91 megawatts of electricity. With annual capacity breakdown or grid collapsing, payment losses have further complicated the power sector's challenges, resulting in adverse consequences for the national economy. To expand this further, I'm being joined by Adetayo Adegbemle, Executive Director, PowerUp Nigeria. Adetayo, thank you so much for talking to us.
It's a pleasure to always be on the program.
Now, Nigeria's power privatization led to an increase in generation capacity from 4,000 megawatts in 2013 to over 13,000 at some point of megawatts in 2023. But then there is a high level of technical and commercial loss. Now, before we begin to look at the indicators in terms of the causes or the causal factors, I'd like you to do an overall assessment of the privatization plan of the sector so far.
I think I've said it on a number of platforms already that the last 10 years of the privately led power sector has been one of evolution, development. We've seen critical stakeholders evolving over the year. So it's been years of learning, even though, yes, we might not be learning as fast as we should or we could. And I also blame, I put the blame for the expectation from people on the people that sold privatization as the solution, as the panacea to the problem that we have, to the challenge that we have. Some people felt that once we privatize, and all the problems will just evaporate or just disappear. But that's not true. I mean, we are talking about a sector that for over 2 decades, over 20 years. I think the last power plant that was built before 1999 was maybe in 1982. I think Delta Farm, it was in 1982. So we have over 25 years of no investment. And of course, our population keeps growing, our needs keeps growing, our consumption keeps growing, our demands increased over that space of 25 years. So it was wrong for anybody to have pushed or to have said it anywhere that privatization was the silver bullet that will solve our problem. Saying that we are not where we used to be in 2010.
Hello, Adetayo.
Environment, mention to distribution, and of course our transmission, which interestingly, transmission still remains with the federal government. And I will hazard, I will gamble to say, I will wager to say that probably transmission has probably seen the level of investment that they've not seen in years, in the last few years. So, last 10 years of privatization has been one of education, learning by all stakeholders. The interesting parts, and that's why people like us coming, is the fact that when they were doing the privatization takeover in 2013, not many people took consumer voice into consideration. They didn't feel it was important. But we have over the years also evolved, and we have people that are speaking actively for consumers also. So there is no policy that is coming out that they don't consider consumers in it. So yes, last 10 years has been a year of evolution and learning.
In a period of evolution, and you also mentioned the fact that it doesn't mean or translate to the fact that the issues as regards the sector would phase out and will have 100%, if I'm paraphrasing now, 100% of optimization in power generation and transmission. And you've also talked about funding and capacity development in that sector, most especially now that it's in the hands of the private sector. I'd like you to just do a bit of breakdown as regards the challenges and, of course, the opportunities that are yet to be tapped into looking at the privatization process, because one would have thought that in the period of this number of years, even as we have had an escalation of population in Nigeria, there would have been some commensurate investment and also increasing the capacity of the equipment and the ability to increase generation capacity for, of course, the population and for the country, but then we are not seeing that. So what are the major challenges, aside the ones that you have mentioned, and the opportunities that are yet to be tapped into?
Well, technically, I won't agree with you that we have not seen changes. Yes, the changes may not have gone round. It might not have touched everybody yet. But if you recall, there was a period where we have the consumer grouping into residential, commercial, and everybody. But now we've evolved our multi-year tariff order to say that if the discos are able to supply you a minimum hours of energy or power per day, this is what you pay as tariff. And if you're not receiving that level of service, then of course you pay much, much less. So in saying that, right now we've had a number of places in the country that you can decide to move to if you want a 24 hours power supply. And I think in those places they have been doing well. Where we've had serious challenges have been where what we call underserved area. Have been places where development has gotten to, but development in the power sector has not gotten there. So we're just touching things here and there to patch up and to supply power to those locations. So while we have some areas in this country, there are some cities, there's some towns in the country that are almost 24 hours power supply. Interestingly, as bad as things seems to be. The good thing now is that we have 11 discos. Each of those have undergone different levels of evolution. I think out of the 10 as a are still holding forth. The remaining 7 has gone through magnet shape up and buy over takeovers.
Okay.
So when we're speaking to challenges, yes, our challenges has practically remain the issue of funding. Part of the things that from the investors' end, part of the challenges that they also have is that they claim that our regulators do not allow them to charge market reflective tariff, which is where the issue of subsidy comes in. They are also fighting, agitating to be able to. But the truth is that if we allow them to charge us the cost rate of electricity, a lot of people will not be able to afford it.
Now, Adetayo, let me just quickly comment there in terms of government intervention. 135.23 billion naira is what the Nigerian government paid in total in terms of subsidizing electricity consumption in the second quarter of 2023. Yeah. So is it that these this financial intervention from government is not enough to stimulate and grow the power sector, most especially for these private investors? Because some people are saying that it should be removed and the private sector should outsource funds to drive its business. So is it that these funds are not enough and you're clamoring for more, or what is the issue in terms of funding this particular sector?
All right. Let me also quickly say this, that the power sector is a regulated sector. To an extent, I have personally advocated that maybe we should just let everybody go. Let there be power first, then we can start regulating. But the thing now is that if you allow them to, if you open up the sector so that investors are able to bring in all the money that they needed to solve all the problem. What it means is that we're going to have a situation where power, first of all, go out of reach of everybody. I think the quickest example I can use is the telecommunications. When they first came and they were doing all these installations and base stations around the country, you know how much, I think some people bought SIM card for as high as 50,000 naira then. Right. But the reverse is the case here now, where people, the government keeps regulating, and that's why the government keeps paying the shortfalls of the tariff that they expected for the core investors or the discos to be charging. So I won't say it's a bit complex, but we have a situation where the government is considering welfareism, and where the discos or the sector is considering marginal costs, of operation. So that's where the subsidy now comes in. Once the marginal cost, for instance, is about 115 naira per kilowatt hour, but the government is saying no, we can't allow you to charge more than 70 naira or 80 naira per kilowatt hour. Then somebody have to pay the shortfall of 70 naira, and that's why the government is making those interventions. But openly, yes, the regulated sector is what is making us to be able to do all those. We have not had we have not been able to have the kind of investment that we need to bring us to have a 24-hour power supply.
Now, Adetayo, aside from, let's look at the facility or the equipment or the things needed to drive the growth of this sector. Some stakeholders say that when we look at issues of gas availability, pricing, as you have mentioned, metering to delayed payments, limited cash flow, and of course, the operation and capex investments in that regards, that the country's economic managers are not being intentional in solving them, and that is causing the epileptic supply that will be experienced. So between the private sector and the government, what recommendation would you suggest or would you make to deal with these perceived bottlenecks that we are seeing in the sector in order to improve it? Because, of course, we need to be sure that the government and the private sector are on the same page and they're able to not only provide funding, Absolutely. But solve all the critical issues that is inhibiting the growth of the sector.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to say this. Usually, for a power project to come online, it takes between 18 months and 24 months, sometimes up to 3 years. So most of the investments and installations that are presently ongoing, most of them are different levels of completion. And by the time most of these projects, especially from TCN, by the time most of these projects come on stream, I'm sure consumers will start feeling the effect at some point. But this is again where we're going to ask, I have been vocal about this. This is where I expected the Minister of Power, who happens to be the number one policy formulator for the sector, to have been proactive, for him to have been able to call all the stakeholders on the same table and say, hey, what are your challenges? What are the low-hanging fruits? For instance, one of the low-hanging fruits is the NMMP Phase 1 metering scheme by the federal government, which promised to install up to 4 million meters for across Nigeria. CBN pulled back for whatever reason. I would have expected the minister to sit on board and say, okay, you know what, how do we get this done? Let's get it done immediately. That will definitely bring support to the power sector. That will bring support to consumers. And that will also ensure that the discos are able to recoup whatever money that, whatever their sales, they'll be able to make their collections back. And making your collection back would definitely help reduce your ATC and C losses, which is the standard by which we measure performance in the power sector. But the minister has not been able to do this. Rather, some people are already pushing him to talk about reviewing the power sector privatization and stuff. I've said this on many platforms already. This is a wild goose chase. Even most of the people that investors took over in 2013 even no more on board. So what exactly is the objective of this review that we're asking for? Is it able to correct some errors that were made? Are we doing it for as case studies, or we're just doing this for academic purposes? So I would have preferred that the minister sit down with all stakeholders and try and make, as far as possible, remove all the low hanging fruits that are in the sector. I mean, one of them, like I said, is metering. The other one is settlement, which I think the last administration actually achieved a lot when they escrow all the accounts. So the disco cannot just pay any amount that they wanted or that they wish to pay. Now everybody's going to that same source, to take their settlement out of it.
Now,
we also have serious challenges with energy theft.
Okay, Adetayo, sorry to cut in again. Still, let's dwell a bit on the new Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu. You talked about him saying that he wants to overhaul the sector, and we also know that he issued a stern threat of sacking non-performing agencies and heads. Of course, when a particular agency or probably a head of a particular agency is not performing creditably, don't you think it would have just been sensible to ease the person out and look for someone who is more competent to take over, and of course to see how you can rejig such agency to increase its ability to deliver on its mandate? Because if you're saying that that might be a miscue of decision, then how do you think that would even impact the sector? Do you think that is a misnomer?
Again, I've always been an advocate of putting the right, pegs in the right holes. One of the positions I've posited and also submitted to the federal government is that if you are making an appointment to anything, I mean, why don't you let make it political, especially in the power sector that has become a serious problem for everybody? Why not let's make it let's go professional? I mean, if you want to employ an MD for a TV station, for instance, you don't go and take somebody that is not knowledgeable, doesn't have any experience. You will take somebody that will come and make presentation and tell you, this is how I plan to make your TV station profitable. That's what we should be doing when you are putting people in places. I have reservation for issuing threats. I don't think issuing threats is the best way to go around it. If you see somebody that's not doing, and you know the right thing to do is to remove the person. Remove the person. You don't need to warn. You don't need to issue threats. You're only just going to start building resistance for yourself. So for the threat that the minister issued, I would say, well, if he is able to achieve results, good. But if he's not able to achieve results, then he's doing bad for all of us. He's not doing well for Nigerians. So, and yes, talking about the round pegs, we need to also vet everybody that we put in key agencies and key positions to ensure that they deliver. The minister himself is not doing well at the moment. I have said it on many platforms. I've been wanting to stay off, but I think the truth is the truth.
Adetayo, you said the minister is not doing well. Is it in terms of his decision or in terms of how he's managing the sector, how he's handling the sector?
Well, when I mentioned the issue of the minister, one of the statements I made was that the minister is supposed to be the lead, right? The head of every policy. He's supposed to. He's the one that's supposed to come and say, okay, this is the direction that we are going to. Since he came on board, since the appointment of ministers, you are the news person. So you monitor news. Have you heard any particular statement about which direction the power sector is going? No. Rather, we're hearing they want to review 2013 privatization. So that what will happen? Are you going to jail if the next chairman made a mistake or didn't do what is right then, which I doubt anybody will agree with? Are you going to jail him? Are you going to prosecute him? Are you going to check the figures of finances? What exactly are you reviewing? It's a wild goose chase. I don't think it's something that even a minister should consider.
Okay, now, Adetayo, let's quickly put a cap on the discussion. Now, of course, just as you have said, there are a few wins in the sector, even as you have seen state electricity autonomy and the growing traction in renewable energy. The country, aside that, the country still has the lowest access to electricity globally, with about 92 million people lacking access to power. That's according to the Energy Progress Report 2022 that was released by tracking SDG 7. So let's quickly move forward, Adetayo. What critical decisions must be taken now to scale up access to power so that if we're going to be comparing Nigeria with other powerful economies, other countries in the world, it would have attained a measurable level?
See, the part of the progress that we made, and which you just also mentioned, is the issue of the new Electricity Act that allows states to also generate, transmit, and distribute. Now, the idea behind that is so that we can accelerate access to electricity. There are a lot of places, and I believe this is also in line with the restructuring that some of us are also been clamoring for. Incidentally, the issue of allowing states to generate, transmit, and distribute, I particularly raised it as far back as 2014, 2015, and made publicly to the then Minister of Power in 2016, Watson Raji Fashola. You know, the idea with that is that federal government, from the vantage, from that top of the table position, are not able to cover every angle, but states will be able to now look at economic bases where they can generate, they can put, they can generate power using their local resources and distribute within their those local resources, those locations. Just yesterday, we had the issue. I don't know if you monitor that. There was a place in Nasarawa called Toto.
Okay.
Yeah, that it just did an on-grid solar installation. What it means is that there is a solar farm there that is feeding into the national grid to feed that location. So we in next few years, we'll start seeing states that are able to make that investment or to create an advantage for investors to come into their state and make such investments without having to go to national for permits.
Adetayo, thank you so much. Adetayo, Adegbemle, Executive Director, PowerUp Nigeria. It's been a robust session that we've had with you this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, now the issue of ongoing electricity subsidies in Nigeria raises important questions about the effectiveness of the privatization process and the future of the country's power sector. And we've been able to open that up on the show this morning. So as Nigeria strives to now meet its growing energy demands and foster economic growth, finding sustainable solutions and implementing necessary reforms will be crucial. So we get to wait in the next few weeks, months or years in terms of what the Nigerian government will do in collaboration with the private sector to see how it can increase the value and processes and operation of the power sector. Let's quickly go on a short break. We'll be back with international business stories. Don't go away.